I guess he stepped out. I was going to introduce David is our yeah.
He's right there.
Oh, would you come up, please?
It's going on and off.
It's going on and off. David is the facilitator for our Friday mornings men's fellowship group, and kind of say a few words.
First of all, I want to thank you very much for including us in this amazing event. Thank you so much for reaching out to us. This is normally our time to meet, so this is just great. Thank you so much. We're a group of Christian men that meet every Friday morning at 8 o'clock. That's a new time. We used to meet at 7. and I didn't understand why I invited people to come, and they looked at me kind of funny. I have to be there at 7. So we've now moved into 8, and we've got a few more people coming. So we've got plenty of room for any one of you to come join us. We basically meet for about an hour at the Beach Club, or the Canoe Club. I still call it the Canoe Club. And we usually have a speaker who either gives their testimony or maybe a lesson. Our own Mark Newton just spoke to us the other day. He's a multi-talented guy, isn't he? Thank you, Mark, for all your records. And then we break up into tables where we have our sharing time with our groups and prayer time. But we're a mix. We come from all different churches, from all different parts of Cobb County. We have a missionary there, Andrew Reiskoff, who does regular trips to Belarus and Poland and Ukraine now. And in your own area, hallucinated. I hallucinated there for just a second. We have a great group. We just come together. We don't have this kind of breakfast, but we do have coffee and bagels. So I would like to invite all of you to come over and have a great time with the men of God and share your lives with each other and with the Lord. Please come join us every Friday morning at the Beach Club at 8 o'clock. Thanks so much.
And now our head chef, Mark Newton, is going to have a few words to say. Let's give him another round of applause.
Everybody, I'm so glad you all came out, and what a great opportunity to really have a chance to talk to others. And but I really, really appreciate you all coming out. Hope you enjoyed the breakfast. I have good news for you. We have seconds up there. Those ladies up there are ready to serve. We have more sausage and egg casserole and so forth and so on. But help yourself. But a lot of good news. I have the good news today to introduce the person who really initiated this whole thing. And I am honored to have the opportunity to introduce him because I've known Mark Zimmerman now for 25 years or so. And I've been in the hospitality industry myself, the hospitality industry since I was 15 years old washing dishes. And I taught for many, many years, but he is Mr. Hospitality. Mark Zimmerman is somebody who is incredibly talented, but so giving. Every time I would call him and say, Mark, can I bring my students down? He would say, absolutely. And he would also come up to Gwinnett Tech to see us and also to talk to our students. Just what an absolute terrific person. Mark has had an amazing amount of experience in conventions and meetings and so forth. He helped open up the Galleria back in 1992, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, as a manager. And then, of course, what he's famous for is working at the Georgia World Congress Center for many, many years. He was the general manager of the Georgia World Congress Center from 2004 until 2016 when he retired. Mark is originally from Michigan, and he came down and he found a light, which is great. Great. And also, we have, Mark has been there for Super Bowls, he's been there for All-Star games, he's been there for, you talk about the huge conventions, he has handled it all for about 500 employees. I mean, incredible. Something you may not realize is, but the Georgia World Congress Center is the 4th largest convention center in the United States. It is absolutely huge, and he managed it. And the thing also, we have also additional good news. He's living here at Big Canoe. He's been here for about 2 years. And so if you don't have an opportunity, if you haven't had the opportunity to meet Mark, he would be delighted to meet you. He is Mr. Personality. But I am delighted and honored to introduce Mark Zimmerman. Again, thank you so much.
I can really now retire because after that, but let's give Mark another hand. Great job, great job. So the great part is I did buy a place 2 years this November, and up at Ridgeview, and of course Bob Kelly is my neighbor up there. Bob was from the Convention and Trade Show business as well. And my accountant's here. I got all these folks over here that I know. Raise your hand, all the people I know. And we had a little men's group last night with a few spirits, I'm sure. But anyways, I am very, very honored. Jerry Katz came to me, and Jerry and I are good friends, and Catherine, and he said, hey, you know Coach Bill Curry, could you get him to speak up here? I'm like, let me see if I can try. And I know you did some adjusting on the schedule because I think on Saturdays you guys usually get together. And I said, let's see if we can maybe get him on a Friday or whatever. But anyway, so Jerry was instrumental in getting me to ask Coach, and Coach Curry is just fabulous. But my story is, and Coach, I could go through your whole history, and I put some pictures on the table, and one of the pictures is of you behind Coach Lombardi, and this morning when he saw the picture, he said, that was pure, what'd you say?
Terror.
Terror. So he's got so many things out, but when Coach Curry, when I was at the World Congress Center, Coach Curry was in his coaching career, coaching, and he was the athletic director and started the football program at Georgia State. Well, they were one of the tenants of the Georgia Dome. So being on that management team, I had a friend of his come to me and said, hey, Coach Curry would like to go to a concert at the Georgia Dome. I said, yeah, sure. What concert does he want to go to? He said, Beyonce and Jay-Z. I said, are you kidding me? I said, I don't think I could go do it. But I was like, no. And it was for his tickets for her granddaughters, I think, or grandkids. But, and you know, when we do something somebody does something for our grandkids, game over. And I've been very blessed. Coach Curry, I know you're going to go through your career with football with Georgia Tech, and that's why I got my Tech colors on today. But also, he's a dear, dear friend, and he's been, it's just incredible. You're in for, how many people have heard Coach Curry speak before? You're in for a real treat if you haven't heard him. It's fantastic, and I know, Coach, you've got a lot of things to talk about, and I'll let him go from there. So let's give a warm, big Canoe hand for Coach. Oh, we're gonna play the video first.
Metaphor for our culture, imperfect like all metaphors. In that huddle is a bunch of folks that are black, brown, white, red, yellow, liberal, conservative, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Buddhist, and Hindu. We are slim, fat, short, tall, fast, and slow. We're analytical people, and we're impulsive people. We have some of the finest men on earth, and heaven knows we got a few rounders. We have been through the fires of Bear Bryant and Bo Schembechler or some such coach who knows exactly how to extract every ounce of our energy. Americans see all that and they resonate with it. They crave it. They take it and us into their hearts. The men who earn a place in the huddle have experienced the miracle of team. The training camp experience is unbelievable. It is day after day, week after week, 2 a day, 3 a day practices in the heat, often in 14 pounds of equipment. Many drop out, numbers thin, and everybody thinks about quitting. Trust me, everybody. For those who do stay, there is the opportunity to participate in the greatest team sport ever devised. It is the only sport in which every player needs every teammate on every play just to survive. We learn ever so slowly that our differences do not matter in the huddle. When we trudge in after each interminable workout, we know that sweat smells about the same on everybody's body. When we get busted in the mouth, that blood that trickles is the same color. Everybody's tired. Everybody's hurt. It is in this process that the miracle occurs. Men who've been raised to hate each other's guts become brothers. I've seen racists reformed. I've seen the most unlikely hugs after victories or losses. I've seen inner city kids invite country boys from the mountains to go home with them for Thanksgiving dinner, and I've seen those invitations accepted and reciprocated, thus changing parents' lives. Our players become brothers for life. It is what America is supposed to be, could be, might be in our best dreams.
Before I begin, let me clarify one thing. Mark made that sound as if I had something to do with the heroic attempt to secure Beyonce tickets. And sure enough, he came through, not just that one time, but many times. And as I look at the gray heads of some of you guys, and I know there are other grandparents in this room, and if that is indeed the case, you understand that in life there are many, many promises. This is going to be the best thing, the most wonderful thing when it happens. All you got to do is just get a Super Bowl ring, or win a championship, or get a title, or secure this honor, or get this big job, or run this convention center, or this football team. And you get there, and you achieve it. And it's okay. It's not great. It's overrated. Most of the stuff that our culture worships is overrated. Grandparenthood is the lone exception. When they put your baby's baby in your arms, there is nothing like it, and it never changes. How many of you remember where you were on September 11th, 2001? Almost all of us know exactly where we were when the plane struck the towers. How many of you remember where you were September 13th, that Thursday of the fateful week? I remember only because ESPN had changed our assignments. At the time, I was working as an analyst for ESPN, and ESPN had wisely determined that if the games were to be played, and the NCAA was meeting to decide whether or not they would be played, if they were to be played, we were not going to get on airplanes to go to our assignments. So they had changed our assignments so that each of us could drive to wherever it was that the game would be played if the NCAA decided to do so. So I was driving from my home in North Carolina, not just about 45 minutes from here, is where we lived at the time. I was driving from there to Birmingham to do the Alabama versus Southern Mississippi game. And we were told to carry our cell phones, and it would be called and we'd be told whether we were going to go ahead and do the games or turn around and go home. So I stopped the gas in Atala, Alabama. Walked in, the nice man there at the filling station recognized me and said, "Hey coach, we're going to play these games this weekend?" I said, "Well, I don't know, but you may be the first fan in America to find out if this thing rings while I'm in your station." Well, sure enough, 2 or 3 minutes later, my phone rang, and I was told we're not going to play. Most people agreed with that decision because we didn't know what we were dealing with. And so I walked back up to the counter and kind of innocently addressed the same guy. And I said, hey, I got an answer to your question. We're not going to play. He walked up and eyeballed me. And I'll never forget, his eyes bulged, his carotids swelled up. He looked me in the eye and he said, well, let me tell you something, Coach. In Otala, Alabama, come Friday night, we're going to play football because it means a lot to us. Felt like I'd been slapped in the mouth. And I had. It was the Holy Spirit. God was speaking to me in a language that I could understand. On my way home, I wept, I prayed, seeking to understand what had just happened to our country, as we all were at that time, and seeking to understand why in the world anybody would care about something as foolish as a football game. Much as I love football, I know it's just a game. A bunch of crazy guys running around smashing into each other. That's what we've done. We would all do it again. So as I drove, I begged God to show me what I can do with this situation, or what I am called to do, because I was being compelled to do something. And what you just saw is what happened. That's where it came from. The reason that it matters on Friday night in America that we play this team sport is Friday night is when America huddles. Over 1 million children play football on Friday night. And whether you like football or don't, and there are a lot of things wrong with football. Believe me, I know. I've got a lot of friends that are no longer living because we played too long, all of us. So I don't kid myself about that. I understand. But as I drove back toward our home, it began to dawn on me that the reason that it means so much, the reason it's important, because people sit together on Friday night that don't sit together any other time of the week, certainly not 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. And what happens when we score a touchdown? What happens? We hug each other. I'm talking about folks that wouldn't dare hug that certain person any other time of the week. I've seen it. I've experienced it. I was in the huddle. It was God's way of speaking to me, and I was ordered to do something to demonstrate that. And so, at the time I was writing articles for ESPN.com every week as a part of my job as an analyst, and that's what I wrote. The National Football Foundation called us, you just wrote our mission statement. Could we use it? And they were kind enough to do the video, the things, and drag the films in and illustrate the language so that you could actually see what we were talking about. Our huddle is not working very well in America these days. We are pushing each other away rather than embracing one another. And there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in college football right now that I'm not going to address at all, but I will tell you this. Whoever wins in our sport, whether it's midget league, junior high, high school, college, NFL, whoever wins and wins and wins understands every word of what you just saw on the screen. Because the guys that love each other are the guys that prevail in the fourth quarter. You want to know where that comes from? It comes from God. And we have the capacity to do it all the time. We just choose not to. So I think we need to search our souls these trying days and decide what is it that we're bequeathing our grandchildren. Carol and I are blessed. I'm blessed with the greatest wife, the greatest 2 children, our son and daughter, and 7 incredible grandchildren, each of which is perfect in every way. And some of them have been at Beyonce concerts, thanks to this guy. See, and that's the other thing about Mark. Be careful if you ask him for something, because he's going to do it, but he's going to remember that you're obligated to it. That's not good. I would have done this to you anyway. I love you. That's why I'm here. It's not precious little Evelyn. beautiful, precious little thing. And we took walks around the pond. I would rock her and put her down for her naps, and we would talk about all kind of crazy things that 3-year-olds are interested in. And I'm whispering sweet nothings, and I've got her on my shoulder, and we're rocking. I'm getting ready to put her down for a nap, and I said, "Oh, honey, I just love you so much, and there's so much I wish I could tell you." The grandchildren call me Bo for reasons we do not know. She said, "Well, Bowie, I'd like to tell you some things too." I said, "Go ahead, darling, you can tell me anything." She said, "Your breath is terrible." Be careful with those little ones. She's just starting her sophomore year at the University of Georgia now, and she acts like she doesn't like me to tell that story, but I kind of think she does. We've got this we've got 5 grandsons in Charlottesville, Virginia. The middle one is competing for attention and time all the time. His name is Brett, and he thinks he's the greatest thing since bubblegum. So I walked in his house a few years ago, and he said, "Hey, Bo, come here, Bo." And he already had 2 teenage big brothers, which explains what is coming next. "Hey, Bo, get your ass upstairs. Let's play video games." What'd you say, man? What'd you say? We don't talk like that. We don't use profanity. You don't speak to an adult disrespectfully like that. We say please and thank you. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. I know your parents had talked. I knew exactly where this was coming from, and I was going to get the 2 big boys after I finished with him. I said, "Now let's try that again. You do that properly this time. Do you understand?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Okay." He said, "Get your ass upstairs, please." Those of us who have authority, and I don't have designated authority anymore, but I have opportunities to speak to wonderful people like you occasionally. We have a responsibility to face the facts in our nation and to decide what is and is not proper language, what is and is not proper behavior, what is and is not the truth. Regardless of how you vote, regardless of your political party, regardless of your religious affiliation, we have an obligation. And if I bring anything to the table that might benefit you, because every one of you has had success in your own lives, or you wouldn't be sitting here. And that's wonderful. God bless you for that. But we can all learn from the champions, and I've been exposed to one champion after another my entire life, and I'm not talking about football players only, although they certainly make up a big percentage of the bunch. I have isolated 6 characteristics of the champions I've observed. There are people who come close, but they skip over some things. I do not qualify, in case that should cross your mind, but I'm happy to share those characteristics for those who might be willing to use 1 or 2 of them or more. But number 1 that I've noticed in all the great champions that have taken an interest in my life is champions show up. What do you say? Well, of course they show up, Bill. The obvious thing to say, no. I mean they show up. They won't quit. They show up prepared. They show up ready to do the job. They show up ready to step in the huddle, even with people they don't like, people who are different, people who might not agree with them on anything other than we got this team and we're going to work our guts out to see if we can't win, see if we can't prevail when everybody else is quitting around us. I'm talking about that kind of show up. I'm talking about show up. I'm talking about Miss Miriam Berry, my choir director at College Park, Georgia, College Park Presbyterian Church. I'm 12 years old. I'm a short, fat kid. I'm ADHD, and nobody knows what that is, and I'm in trouble all the time. I'm wonderful mom and dad trying to figure this thing out that God put on them. But Miss Berry loved me, and she taught me to sing. It was the night of the Christmas concert. It was my one chance to shine, because usually I was in the principal's office. I'm not bragging about that, it's just how it was. It was very confusing. And so I had rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed this wonderful passage of music. I had my little blue robe, my little red bow tie there. And it was the night of the Christmas concert, Christmas Eve. And in our little church, it wasn't a big church, but it was beautiful. And I stood up and I was doing my number and I was doing fine until I looked out and saw something I had never seen before. SRO, packed house, standing room only. People standing in the back. And it looked like one of those pictures of Broadway. And I panicked and I choked and I forgot the words. Right in the middle of my one chance to do something decent. Well, I'm staring at the standing room only crowd, and as long as my attention was fixed on the crowd, nothing could help me. But when I stopped singing, Mrs. Berry, who was seated at the piano in accompaniment down, I'm standing up next to the pulpit, so she's down here, she could see my face, maybe anticipating that this might happen. But when I stopped singing, she just picked it up with her beautiful voice. So everybody in the congregation, except Mrs. Berry and the terrified kid, thought there was a duet going on. So she sang for a while, and after what seemed an eternity, something said to me, "Look at Mrs. Berry." So I look into those eyes, and all that love, and all those rehearsals, and all that passion for doing this exactly right came back to me, and with my eyes locked on hers, the words came back, and I finished. Maybe better than I ever had before. And my life was never the same. That was an act of an obscure choir director in a small church in College Park, Georgia. She could have done what a lot of other teachers and coaches had already. I'll get him off. He doesn't know the words. Sit down, Lord. Get him. She didn't do that, did she? What did she do? She loved me when I least deserved it. What did Jesus teach us? If nothing else, a lot. But that's lesson number one. Love those who least deserve it, I think. When they least deserve it, because I have been one of those so many times in my life. First characteristic, champions show up, and they don't all look like all pros. They look at all different shapes, forms, colors, religions, etc. Number two, champions have singleness of purpose and can spread that singleness of purpose, can make that a part of other lives if they wish. The greatest halftime speech I've ever heard in my life came in my rookie year with the Green Bay Packers. We were playing the Detroit Lions in Detroit. And for those of you that are, I see, again, people my age will remember some of these names, but the Detroit Lions were the only team in the NFL that was not intimidated by the Green Bay Packers. They didn't care who we were. They didn't care who our coach was. They were mean, they were crazy, and they would knock your teeth out. Joe Schmidt was the little linebacker. Night Train Lane was the corner. Dick LeBeau, Mike Lucci, all those guys did not care. Alex Karras, they didn't care who the Packers were, and they were killing us. It was 21-3 at the half. And I'm standing next to Coach Lombardi, and my friend Mark got this picture and asked me what that was. Well, I had to stand beside Coach Lombardi, and that was mostly terror for fear he was going to turn and say something to me. He could wither you with a remark, and he did every day. He kept us focused. Well, we're down 21-3, and we're just playing so terrible. And Karras comes walking by Lombardi. We were playing in Tiger Stadium, so it was a baseball field, so the benches were on the same sideline. So Karras is returning to his bench. He walks by Coach Lombardi, and I'm standing terrified next to Coach Lombardi like I always had. I had to stand next to him because I was the long snapper and played on every special team. And Karis looks at Lombardi, and we had ladies present, so I can't tell you what he said exactly. But it was something to the effect of, how do you like that? You bleeping, bleeping, bleeping. And I thought, God's going to kill him right now. Or at least Lombardi will kill him. I turned to Coach Lombardi and looked at him, he smiled. What's he doing smiling? The guy just insulted him. I couldn't believe it. Well, the half ended and we run in the locker room. The NFL halftime is 12 minutes. We had a bunch of future Hall of Famers on that team. We were one of the only teams that was really integrated. A lot of teams were racist and bragged about it and only had 1 or 2 African American players or none. We had 10, and Coach Lombardi, the one he had a lot of strong suits. His strongest suit is that he would not tolerate racism. If you make one racist statement on that team, you were on the next Greyhound out. What did that mean? That meant, like the film you just saw, everybody knew he was respected because the only thing he cared about is, are you a good person and can you play football? So we're sitting in the locker room and now we're talking about sitting in there with Ray Nitschke and Willie Davis and Willie Wood, all these future Hall of Famers, and all of them were terrified at what Lombardi was getting ready to do to us. Because we'd never been like that. And while in my experience, we'd never been that far behind at any point. Lombardi no-showed. Lombardi no-showed. We sat there staring at each other, sweating bullets. With about 30 seconds left in the half, just before the officials came in, he stepped in. And here's what he said. Somehow he got eye contact with all 40 men. There were 4 rookies. I was one of them. I think we were crying, all 4 of us. Here's what he said. Men, we're the Green Bay Packers. And you walked out. What do you think happened to the Detroit Lions in the second half? It was awful. We destroyed them. We ran them out of their own stadium. Why? Why? Was it because of rhetoric? Was it because Lombardi had pithy statements that he could use at halftime to fire somebody? No, it's because he had hammered his culture into our brains and into our souls so thoroughly that we had no choice but to respond as we had been trained. And why did he smile at Alex Karras? He smiled because he knew that Karras thought the game was over. And he knew the game, he knew his team. He knew the game was not over. That team won the world championship. And then the next one. And then the next one. I don't know if anybody will ever win 3 in a row again, but I doubt it. But that's what they did. I did not have the privilege of staying with them all that time. I was moved on in the expansion draft, and we're not going to talk about that. Second characteristic of a champion is singleness of purpose. And he had taught us so well his singleness of purpose that he didn't have to elaborate. And that's the greatest halftime speech I ever heard. The third characteristic of a champion will surprise you. It is called unselfishness. Unselfish. I showed up at the Green Bay Packers. I was drafted in the 20th round. They only had 20 rounds then. We only have 7 now because they don't know the names after 7. Lombardi had turned to his personnel director, Pat Pepler, and he said, Pepler, it's 2 in the morning. I'm exhausted. I'm going to bed. We've drafted 19 players. Do something humorous with the 20th selection. Pepper loved telling that story publicly. I was the humor. So I show up, and I'm 2 weeks late to training camp because of something called College All-Star Game. We don't have time to get into all that, but you were allowed to show up 2 weeks late, but it still made it more terrifying to me that I was going to be behind everybody else, and probably nobody would speak to me, or they might make me sing to the group, or they might ridicule me at the first dinner, or whatever's going to happen. And so I'm shakily walking over to dinner at St. Norbert College in our training camp, and there's somebody walking beside me. Didn't say a word, just silently, right to our left. That's Potter Star. I said, oh, Mr. Starr. He said, no, none of this Mr. stuff. It's just Bart. Hi, Bill. So glad to meet you. I'm glad to meet you, Mr. Bart. He said, look, I don't know what your faith is, but we have a wonderful minister at our church, and Sherry and I would like to invite you. First of all, you and I can have dinner together if that's okay tonight, because I think we can do that. And then we'd like you to come and go to church with us tomorrow and have Sunday dinner if you'd like that. That's how I was introduced to the greatest football team that ever existed. That's what they were being called then. The greatest team of all time. That was before they won 3 in a row with him as the quarterback. That's how we started with the Green Bay Packers. Bart decided he was going to be my friend. I could tell you so many stories and times that I would become furious and judgmental toward Coach Lombardi, and there were days that I hated him and thought and judged him because he was Catholic and he went to Mass every day, and I thought that was weird. And I said something to Bart like, nobody goes to church every day. He said, Bill, sit down. Don't be judgmental. Does that sound familiar? Christian brothers and sisters, don't be judgmental. And Coach Lombardi, by the way, does go to Mass every morning. He's Catholic. But when you've been working for this man about 3 weeks, you're going to realize this man needs to go to church. Bart actually said that. Fast forward many, many years. I lost my job at the University of Kentucky. It was very embarrassing. I deserved it. It was nobody's fault of mine. We had 4 games left to play. We had a great bunch of youngsters, and I wanted them to be able to finish well, and I wanted to make a good plan. And so I told my assistant, I don't want anybody coming in my office at any point this morning. Where do you organize practice? We got to play these 4 games. I want to win all 4. I want these guys to go out with the right feeling about each other. That's our goal. So please keep me. Don't let anybody in here. Well, about an hour later, she says, there's somebody here to see you. I said, no, you don't understand. Did you understand me? Did I make myself clear? I don't, there's nobody here to see me. She said, oh yes, there is. And I don't, and about this time, Bart walks in. This is 1996. That's 31 years later, after he got fired, and by the great team that he helped found. And I said, what are you doing here? He said, I came to see you. I said, were you passing through? I was in Lexington, Kentucky. He lived in Birmingham. He said, no. I said, did you have business in town? No. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm going to spend the day with you. That is a teammate. That's a teammate. You want to know why they won? You think they trusted each other? How many times did he do that for 1,000 other people? And so did most of the other guys on that team. Champions are unselfish. That's what I learned. Champions number 4, item number 4, champions are tough. Champions are gritty, tough, demanding. I'm walking out of the dorm, Green Bay, Wisconsin. Again, last draft choice, wondering if I'm going to be able to make this team. I had never been in a huddle. My biggest problem was not Lombardi. It was not Bart Starr being too nice to me. My biggest problem is that I'd never been in a huddle with an African-American person in my life. I didn't know how to talk. I said racist things and didn't even know they were racist. And I thought, these guys are going to listen to me. All these big old fast guys, and they're going to hurt me and send me home. And I don't even know if I blame them. So a Southern white boy in that environment, walking in and out of that locker room on eggshells. And the most intimidating of them all was the defensive captain. His name was Willie Davis. He was from Grambling State University, working on his master's degree in business at the University of Chicago, while being captain of the greatest football team of all time. That's what they were being called. A future Hall of Famer. Well, I'm walking out of the door. Everything is strange. Everything is alien. It's August and it's 43 degrees in Wisconsin. That ain't right. voice came out of the darkness from behind me. Bill, I thought it was God. I just sat out in the grass. It was Willie Davis. He said, I'd like to speak to you. And I thought, oh no, he's going to tell me to get lost. I said, okay. He said, Bill, I've been watching you at practice, and I really like your effort. You try so hard, and I think you got a chance to make our team, and I'm going to help you. I said, you would? You're going to help me? He said, yeah. When I was young, we played the Eagles in the World Championship game. And I didn't play well. And I'm so embarrassed. He said, I left that field in Philadelphia, and I looked out there, and there were popcorn boxes and newspapers blowing around, but there was a lot more on that field. There were regrets on that field. I had left regrets. And I made up my mind at that instant, I would never leave regrets on a football field ever again, or anything else in life. And Bill, you learn to do that, and you just might make our team. And when Nisky's tearing your head off, and smashing your nose and breaking your face mask, all of which he did. And when Lombardi's screaming profanity and spitting in your face, which he did, and you don't think you can take it another minute, he said, you come find me, I'll get you through it. I'll get you through it. You know what we call it? We call it Dr. Feelgood. Sure enough, when those things happened to me, and there was blood and tears everywhere, and all I wanted to do was quit, go find Willie D. Dr. Feelgood. I said, how you feel, old man? I said, feel good, man. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it, Billy. It changed my life. Unexpected, undeserved, unrewarded acts of kindness with no attached commensurate rewards for the offerer. That is the essence not only of the gospel, but it's the essence of competitive sport, and it's supposed to be the essence of America. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that's what we're based on, learning to get along. Yes, knock down, drag out, disagree. I mean, if that team would get in a room without Lombardi, and you'd see some of the worst arguments and fights in the world. But when we walked out, we were together. And that's easy to talk about and hard to do, and I know that. I know that I'm just an old job blowing the whistle. I understand. But this is what God compels me to do. So when I say tough, I'm not talking about standing over an opponent or talking trash or kicking somebody in the pilot. I'm talking about taking responsibility and not pointing fingers at others and saying to your teammates, I will help you do this. I will get you through this. I will help you no matter what, no matter how different we are. I pursued him for 30 years to figure out why he did that. He wouldn't tell me. I flew to LA one time to a convention. He had business in LA, so I took Willie to lunch and I said, why'd you do that to young Bill Curry? And I just couldn't wait for him to brag on young Bill Curry and what a great prospect that was and all that. You know what he said? I don't know. I was persistent, and many years after that, we were at a leadership institute in Aspen, Colorado, late at night. I said, come on, Willie, you never have really answered me. He said, okay, I thought it would sound like bragging if I told you the whole truth, but the reason I did that for you was my Christian faith. That's the reason. I thought, I got a long way to go. I need to be doing that every chance I get for some young person. And I had the privilege of doing that for many years as a coach with guys when sometimes they needed it most. And then there were times when I failed and I didn't recognize their spiritual needs the way I should. And I pray God's forgiveness for those moments and try to make up where I can. But that's toughness. That's taking responsibility. I never saw Willie Davis point fingers at teammates. I never saw him blame anybody else for his problems. If he got knocked around, he said, I got knocked around. I left regrets on the field. There's a guy named Jim Rome who said there are two pains in life, the pain of discipline, the pain of regret. You choose. That hit me hard. It happens every day that we make choices, does it not? So, characteristic number 4, champions are tough. Champions are, number 5, are smart. And by that, I don't mean IQ points. I'm talking about prepared. When I reported to the Baltimore Colts, imagine this, some skinny kid from College Park, Georgia, gets to hike the ball to Bart Starr and Johnny Unitas for much of his career. That's not even fair to everybody else, to get to be in the huddle with those guys. But sure enough, there I was, and there was Johnny Unitas. We're walking down to the practice field. Don Shula's training camps were worse than the Marine Corps. This is according to Marines. I'm talking about, it was unbelievable. And I thought, oh, Maryland, that's going to be nice and cool. Wrong. It was so hot. We're dying. And we're going down to the practice field. It's my first week. And Unitas has got on a rubber jacket. And he's whistling a happy tune. He's in his 12th year in the league. So I come up beside him. So I'm going to try to make friends with this quarterback. Hey, the most famous quarterback in the world. I said, hey, Mr. Unitas, what are you so happy about? It's so hot. You get ready to go down here and practice. He looked at me, he said, Billy, you know something? You're a long time dead. I said, what'd you say? Long time dead. He said, yeah, you don't get very long on this earth to be alive. You only get a few days. If you're not happy about where you're going today, maybe you need to go somewhere else. My practice habits improved immediately. I knew exactly what he meant. You couldn't miss it. As I was leaving the practice field, exhausted and moaning and complaining to myself after 2 hours, 2.5-hour practices, 2 of them with some special teams in between in a 100-degree temperature, wearing all 14 pounds of equipment and feeling sorry for Bill Curry and trying to find a shower. We had 3 shower heads, no air conditioning, so your clothes were instantly wet. Everything about it was so terrible and uncomfortable. I come back out and it's starting to get dark, and I look down the practice field and there's somebody down there, still down there. This is an hour after practice now. It's still hot, but we're losing light. I thought, well, the high school kids messing around down there, so I'll walk over and I'll look. It's Johnny Unitas throwing pass routes to Raymond Berry. Do you wonder why nobody could stop Johnny Unitas and Raymond Berry? They were throwing outs and digs and flies and all the pass cuts, hours after practice. It was Raymond's 13th year in the league. It was Unitas' 12th year. That year, he was most valuable player in the National Football League for the 3rd time. It was not because of talent. It was not because of him being more brilliant than others, although he may have been. It was incredible preparation, incredible giving of himself. When others went home, he was just starting to prepare. And you really, really wanted him on your side. You really did. Champions are smart, meaning prepared, willing to do the extra study. I'm married to a person that will do that every time. Dr. Carolyn Newton Curry raised our children beautifully, and when they got school age, she went back to school and she'd come home and say, we're all going to do our homework together. Both our children owe their educations and everything else to their wonderful mom, because I was busy running around the world trying to raise everybody else's children, and I'm not happy about that. But I love coaching, and the hours were made up for because of a great lady. She had that same characteristic. It doesn't matter how long it takes, she will sit there and she will get the job done. That's why she has a PhD, and that's why she writes books, and that's why she puts up with me. I've been in love with this woman for 68 years. I met her in the 4th grade. She's been in love with me for almost 6 years. I started doing the dishes. Oh, she loves that. It works, guys. I'm telling you. It's just wonderful. Mom is real happy when you do. And actually, I've gotten to where I almost enjoy that now. But I can hardly look back at our lives without going and embracing her, because she put up with me and she kept me on track. All those times when I would have not stayed that way, I owe her everything. She is the light of my life. She's a preparer. She's smart. So, that's the fifth characteristic. Sixth characteristic comes out in the fourth quarter. And when I got to football when I was 12 years old, I only had two goals in life. Number one, I swear, was to marry Carolyn Newton, who would not speak to me at that time. She was taller than me at the time. But number two was to pitch for the Yankees. And running into other people and possibly damaging my throwing arm was not among the things that I thought was good for my plans. So I decided I would quit this ridiculous sport of football because we were smashing each other in the face and we were tackling each other and falling on the ground and doing terrible things to one another. And I just didn't see any sense in it. So I decided, well, I'm going to quit. But I had a problem with the quitting thing, you see, because my father lived at our house. Major W.A. Curry didn't quit at anything. National weightlifting champion, hand-to-hand combat instructor for the United States Infantry at Fort Benning. And he said, son, I didn't ask you to go out for football. I didn't even suggest it. But you went out, you made a commitment to your teammates, and you're not going to let them down. You're going to stay out there so they can count on you. Lesson number one from a great dad and a great sport. You don't quit. Champions don't quit. So I got a chance to perform with champions and to learn from them because I had somebody in my life that prevented me being a quitter. You see, that's what happens when you see a great team in our sport. It's the fourth quarter in a 2-minute drill. It's 102 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm playing in my 23rd football game in a row. I have not missed a play. I'm not going to miss a play. I've just broken my left hand for the third time. In our days, pardon me ladies, but you could have a bloody nose and stay on the field. You just got smashed in the nose again. You can see that my nose has required plenty of work. And I'm not bragging or complaining, I'm just telling you. But that's how it feels in those 2-minute drills late in the year. You're so exhausted. And I only want one thing. And it is not to win the game. It is not to protect Bart Starr or Johnny Unitas. It is not to do my job. I only want one thing. It's the same thing I wanted when I was immature and 12 years old. I want to quit. And see, in our business, you don't have to leave the field to quit. In our faith, we don't have to leave the church to quit. All you got to do in my sport is turn your shoulders ever so slightly and let Joe Green run back there and do what he does to quarterbacks. And we can all go home and go suck on the oxygen. And nobody would know that I really decided to let my team down. Right? Wrong. Deep inside, God has planted the Holy Spirit in each of us, every single one of us. And that's what we love about our grandchildren, that spark. There's a great word, magnanimitas, greatness of spirit. Magnanimitas is from the Latin. 12 letters, 5 syllables, one word. You have it, I have it, our grandchildren have it. It is God's gift to us. There's our greatness of spirit. And when we choose to stifle it, that's our choice. And it stifles and it can go out. When we choose to express it and to encourage it, we change the world. So for us to join hands in the huddle and decide deep inside our hearts, we're not going to let each other down today. That's the team that wins. Don't kid yourself. I can tell you right now who's going to win the Super Bowl and who's going to win the national championship. I can't tell you the name of the team, but it'll be the team that does that for each other. Because you see, once you've decided you're going to quit, you have to look around the huddle and, uh-oh, I look at this guy next to me and I know what he's going to do. Because I've been there with him so many times. He's going to suck it up and give it more than he's got. And in that moment, I have found my motivation. I cannot let So at the end of that game, win or lose, we can embrace and know this day, we were the best that we could be. We took what God gave us and we gave it all to each other for our team. We can do that in the church. We can do that in our organizations, in our faith. We can do that. And when we do, not only are our lives changed, but every life we touch, every life we give ourselves benefits from God's gift to us. And that's the essence of where we live. And every single one of us can do something every day that will please God and have Him smile. Let your light shine so that men can see your good works and rejoice and praise your Father who is in heaven. Amen.
Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask Coach Curry?
Mark, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Coach, you wrote 2 books, if I'm not mistaken?
One of them, I had a little help from a guy named George Plimpton, meaning he wrote it. George was a great author. It's called One More July, and he had me speaking to a reporter, and then he edited and such. The other one I did write by myself, and I was pushed so hard by Dr. Carolyn Newton Curry, I got tired of being harassed. And it's called 10 Men You Meet in the Huddle, and I actually did write that.
I just wanted to tell people, I had the great opportunity to read that book. It is an amazing book, but I think what all of us would really enjoy is your childhood. And because it talks a lot about your experience in College Park growing up and just remembering, wow, that's something we need to share with our grandkids. But that's such a great book. And,
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Another question. I do want you to, you have said, I've heard you many times, talk about what an influence Coach Bobby Dodd on your life.
Yeah. I don't have time to talk about everybody every time I speak. Coach Dodd should always be included, and I think that's a really good reminder, Mark. I grew up a Georgia Bulldog. My dad was born in Athens, graduated from the university, and it was just assumed that I would go to the University of Georgia. And I was a lightly recruited guy, but Tech, Georgia, and a couple of others did recruit me. And so my high school counselor, Ms. Ruby Crow, found out that I was considering Georgia Tech. And she called me in, and she said, Bill, I understand you're considering Georgia Tech as an option to go to college. And I said, yes, ma'am. She said, don't. I said, don't what? She said, don't consider Georgia Tech. I said, why? She said, Bill, you're not a stupid boy, but you have frolicked all the way through high school. You would not survive 2 semesters at Georgia Tech. They have national merit scholars. They take calculus and physics. So don't even think about it. So I thanked her, went down to the library, and looked up the word frolic. This is the truth. It was so stupid. And I had messed around in high school, and she was trying to save me from being embarrassed. But what she didn't know is that I'd gotten a hold of a map, and I had studied that map, and I learned that Athens was not the closest campus to Agnes Scott College. Guess who was going to be at Agnes Scott College? The future Carolyn Curry. And I wasn't going very far from her. I still haven't gone very far from her. This is 63 years later. So. So I go to Georgia Tech, and Coach Dodd makes this fancy speech about we're going to go to every class. He said, men, I'm a third quarter sophomore at the University of Tennessee. My football record there as a quarterback is 27-1, but I don't have a diploma. That is not going to happen to you. You do what I tell you, like the Naval Academy. You go to every class. You don't ask questions. You show up. You sit on the front row. You take notes. You learn to compete with these great scholars, and you can do it. And I'm going to show you how to do it. However, if you choose to not do what I tell you, you will be gone from here so fast nobody will remember your name. So naturally, I thought he was teasing about that. I had chemistry at 8 o'clock in the morning, 4 mornings a week. And Dr. A.C. Top was speaking a language I did not understand. And I thought I could save him some trouble and me too by sleeping in. And then Coach Dodd was probably teasing about having to go to every class. And plus there's no way they could catch me because there were 100 kids in the class. The next day, my name was on the bulletin board. Bill Curry, report to Grant Field at 5:30 a.m. Wednesday morning in your running gear. They ran me up and down those west stands till I could not stand up. I was gagging, sobbing, and I decided that chemistry at 8 o'clock in the morning was a wonderful thing. And that's a cute little story. But here's what I want you to understand. I never cut another class. I graduated from Georgia Tech, and sure enough, I was out of my league scholastically. But I graduated only because my football coach loved me too much to allow me to self-destruct. I think that's what.
We've got some, if some people would like to take some pictures with Coach Curry or whatever, there's some posters or some pictures on the table if you want to sign some coach or whatever, but anyway, so Phil?
I appreciate all of you showing up. I would like to hear a round of applause for all of the volunteers who helped put this on, our food service. Especially our head chef and the ladies from Women's Scholarship who helped us serve. And thank you again from the Men's Fellowship for your coming this morning. Tremendous, tremendous presentation. Gives us all a lot to think about. So Coach Curry's up here. I'm sure he'll be more than glad to sign a few pictures. So if you have a picture picked out on the table there, then you can bring it up here and he will be more than glad to sign it. Thank you very much for coming this morning.